get, he's gonna show it to me for like half an hour, so 30 minutes of it. He was like, no. So, yeah.
Let's also not forget that we need to now separate the relief and a separate motion on the special use.
Okay.
We've been told, because of the way that Matt was presenting the cases, that any relief
special
Okay.
use.
That's what I've been told.
All right, so,
Based on that.
Because the way Matt was doing things in a certain way. That's what,
so this ordinance,
that's what they told me.
this ordinance actually has to do with the zoning map amendment case. Is that right?
Yeah, and then it's also gonna minimize some of the relief that
Right.
is no longer gonna be.
The one who discussed it, okay, all right. Let's see, is this thing on? Oh. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the August 4th meeting of the Skokie Plan Commission. Just want to let you know that the Plan Commission is an advisory board to the Board of Trustees. Our opinion tonight is not binding. Our report will be given to the trustees, and they'll kind of look it over, and they will decide, they'll have the final decision at one of their meetings, and they meet on the first and third Mondays of every month. What I do is I will ask the petitioner to come up to present their case, then I will have the staff present their case, after which I will open up the floor to anyone who has a question or comment on the related case, and then I'll ask the petitioner to come back up for rebuttals. First order of business is approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Good. Everybody in favor, say aye. Okay, minutes have been approved. First case tonight, excuse me, is zoning chapter amendment in case 2022-22P. Now, I have two related cases here, 2022-23P, 2022-24P, and all this is dealing with the property at 5404 through and including 5442 Avenue and 7235 Linder. Do I have the petitioner here tonight? Please come up. Would you give us your,
Would you prefer we speak from, have some members of our...
I just need you to come up first and introduce yourself to the commission. Then you can introduce your chorus. Back by Carrie, please.
You can just come back here. Gotcha, yeah, it's on.
Well, good evening.
Well, is it okay there?
Back here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't, is this on?
I'm completely,
Yeah.
I think we'd prefer to be back here. I'm happy to then navigate the
Yes.
slide.
Yeah, would you,
So, do you want your PowerPoint for this also? Okay.
Thanks a ton.
okay, sir, for
There you
now, just approach the microphone and give us your name, relationship to the petitioner.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Braden Lord. I'm an attorney for the law firm Elrod Friedman LLP. We are the land use counsel for the applicant for the Tui and Linder mixed use development. It's the subject of those three cases this evening.
Okay, I'm sorry, your name was
Braden Lord.
Braden?
Braden Lord.
Braden Lord,
Yes,
okay. Yeah, speak into the microphone, couldn't hear you.
happily.
Okay, would you at this time introduce members of your group?
Yes. So with me, I have Scott.
And also too, could you have them stand and,
Do you want film mine coming up or standing for now? Make it easier to keep track.
Sure.
So I have Scott Gidwitz with me. He's the developer for the Tui Linder development and longtime co-owner of the subject property. I also have Michael Brecklaw. He's principal at Fitzgerald Associates Architects and one of the leaders of our design team at Fitzgerald. With him, Eric Overby is a managing associate at Fitzgerald, and then Keith Lee is a senior associate at Fitzgerald, and then Javier Milan is principal at KLOA and is one of the members of our transportation or traffic engineering team.
okay, very good. Gentlemen, while you're standing, I would like to swear all of you in case you will be giving testimony or statements tonight. So raise your right hand, please. Do you affirm that the testimony you give tonight is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you?
I do.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, you may sit down. Counselor, is there notice and order?
Yes, their notice is proper and correct for all three cases.
Okay, and since we are on the subject, we're gonna work through, although the cases are related, we need to separate the case, separate out the case 2022-22P, which is the zoning map amendment. We have an update to that amendment, and Counselor Travilski will fill us in on the updates.
Sure, just let the commissioners know that on Monday there was changes made to the village code regarding the B4 district, which, as I understand, will render, sorry, what? Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, it's on.
Sorry. There were changes made to the B4 district on Monday by the village board that will probably render moot some of the relief that's requested tonight by the petitioners. And Carrie will point out what those items are.
Thank you. The B4 zoning district was changed on, some of the regulations were changed on Monday night. You may recall from a few months back that the working title was RX, or Regional Mixed Use Shopping District. As we were fine-tuning the language, we felt keeping the spirit and intent of including mixed use or adding residential to the B4 district, and some other kind of mixed-use type of regulations was still in keeping with the spirit and intent of what you reviewed and recommended to the village board and what was discussed at the village board meeting. But we stuck with just changing the regulations within the B4 section of the code instead of shifting it elsewhere. So that's, I guess, maybe the biggest change, but the spirit and intent is still there. We have minimum district size of 20 acres, so that's not just a parcel, but like the zoning area altogether. The building height, the maximum is 12 stories or 175 feet. The front yard setback along Cook County or state route frontages is 25 feet, and then other frontages like local roads is 15 feet. Just hitting the highlights here. So the commercial area for mixed-use buildings, there's a minimum of 10,000 square feet or 15% of net first floor area, whichever is less, to make sure there's still a commercial component within the mixed-use buildings. And the rest of them are kind of our mixed-use regulations for like our CX district or our core mixed-use district, which applies to downtown. And then the parking ratio for residential in the B4 district, it's not a flat rate, but it's one criteria for any size unit, anywhere from studio to 3-bedroom or possibly more. But in this case, 0 to 3 bedrooms, and that would be 1.35 parking spaces per unit plus 0.15 spaces for guests per unit. So it comes out to 1.5 parking spaces per unit. And then our Appendix A, which is our land use table. So we've added residence, 3 or more unit multifamily as a restricted use in B4. And then also residence upper story over non-residential use as a permitted use. And then I guess circling back to also related to this case is the cannabis dispensary. There are some adjustments to that. And so the new regulations include a cannabis dispensary can be located closer to, say, private or public school grounds, child care center, not in a residence, park, library, et cetera, as long as it's located within 750 feet of the Skokie Police Department. So that's, this is within that distance, so it meets the criteria there. We continue to want to make sure that there's no direct interior access between the cannabis dispensary building and the surrounding building as well. And I think that covers
with all
it.
your updates?
Yes, that's it in a nutshell, yes.
Commissioners, any questions about the new ordinance or the change in the B4? No questions? Okay. Thank you, Carrie.
Thanks.
Counselor, you may present your case, and let's just talk about the zoning map change that you're requesting first, then we'll move on to the site plan and the other two cases.
Okay. I just want to say a few things about the development that, apply to all three, but are not specific to the site plan. The first of which is that Carrie Haberstich, if it's not obvious, has spent an incredible amount of time and energy helping us refine this development and understand how the new B4 district amendments work, and we are incredibly grateful for everything that she's done. Carrie's been a pleasure working with you, and because of her, it's a pleasure appearing before all of you tonight. As mentioned, our requested relief is three parts. We'll stick with the first for now. It's the zoning map amendment. And this is from the current zoning for the subject property. Subject property is partially zoned within the B3 business district. Let me show you that. I'll flip back and forth so that we can just do the zoning for now. And partially within the M1 office assembly industry district. We propose to rezone all of that into the recently amended B4 regional shopping mixed-use district. Just, especially since it's so relevant to how the zoning district changed, I'll give the highlights of our project timeline. We first submitted this project long before the B4 district was amended for preliminary review in mid-2021. Staff had a number of comments for us. We substantially revised our plans and formally applied for this relief in June of this year, then complied with the public notice requirements and first appeared before the Appearance Commission last month. The Appearance Commission granted our certificate of appropriateness unanimously without conditions. And then pursuant to the new B4 district amendments, we finalized our development and appear before you tonight. Quick question, can I still do a general background on the property and then just not redo it for...
Sure.
Okay, that works well for us. I'll also clarify the district surrounding our proposed development. So as the name of the development suggests, our project is located at the intersection of Toohey and Linder, directly southwest of the Village Police Headquarters, and then directly north of the already B4 zoned Village Crossing Shopping Mall. Other than that B4 zone, the property is bounded to the east and to the west by the B3 district and to the north by M1 zoned properties. Those are the bare basics of our application and the property. Scott Goodwitz knows a lot more about this site, and so I'm going to hand things over to him to talk about the property and our proposal.
Sir, just for the record, would you please reintroduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Scott Goodwitz. I am the developer for the project in question at Linder and Toohey. And my family has, a couple who are in attendance tonight, have owned the property for nearly 60 years. I think first I'd like to thank the village staff, the Plan Commission, and the neighbors who've come out and give us a chance to present and hear us out. It's a pleasure to be here. And those who are familiar with the site, you'll know that we suffer from a couple challenges. I think the first among which are that the existing improvements are aged, they're obsolete, they clearly don't meet the needs of the village, and they don't meet the needs of sort of the modern retail tenant along the Toohey corridor. Second of all, which is obviously why we're here, we have a mix of industrial and commercial zoning districts that make up the property, which again are incompatible with what we believe to be the highest and best use, which is a combination of retail and residential uses. So just to give you a brief history of the work that we've done over the past few years, much of it has been in conjunction with the staff here. About 3 years ago, we began to reimagine what this property wants to be. We had no idea what it would ultimately look like, but we knew, just given the surrounding context, that it should have a very strong retail component. So we engaged new retail brokers to go solicit proposals from prospective tenants and try to gauge what that best use would be for that retail component. We actually got really positive reception. We analyzed about a dozen different opportunities and schemes, but ultimately the mix of tenants, we couldn't quite provide, given the site constraints, what the tenants wanted, what we wanted, and ultimately what the village wanted. So it really just didn't make much sense. And Braden alluded to the work that we presented about a year ago. The work really started prior to what we presented about 18 months ago with the village team, and envisioning something more higher density and a mixed-use program. And so as a product of collaborating with the village, we're actually now planning an investment that you see here, which is orders of magnitude larger than sort of the strip mall style retail that we were originally contemplating. So what you see right now is 2 phases, east and west, along Tui, on the 6.5 acre or 6.25 acre site, excuse me, with 494 residential units and over 30,000 square feet of retail, of which a potential cannabis dispensary is included in that count as well. And ultimately, one of the goals that we have for the project, which the Fitzgerald team will discuss further on in more detail, is to have this be one of the most sustainable projects in Skokie as well as the North Shore. One thing I'd like to highlight initially is that we are obviously not seeking any public funds. Our friends down the road at the old Purple Hotel site they requested a very significant TIF amount, but that is not in the cards for us, and we are not seeking that from the public at this time. I just would like to point out that we also have met with School District 72, presented effectively the presentation that you will see tonight. They had no objections, no comments, and I think just based in conjunction with a bit of analysis that we did with our prospective management team, we are of the belief that there will be very few child or school-age children at this type of property. And I'll wrap up this intro with, again, to touch on Braid's commentary. We're thrilled that the village has been willing to work with us and that you guys have been so forward-thinking in how you've envisioned growth for the Tui corridor, and you'll see that your village staff has been very diligent in providing a litany of different comments and conditions, which we are pleased to incorporate. And let me bring up Fitzgerald to talk about the rest of the development. So thank you very much.
Sir, at this time, I'd like to ask you, will your comments be restricted to the zoning chapter amendment, or are you planning on going on to the full development, which you can do later? I would just like to move this case along.
We don't have all that many specific comments comments that are specific to our compliance with the B4 district, and so we can certainly keep the general explanation, for later in the
Yeah, why don't we do
meeting.
that? We'll
That's
just move
perfectly
along
fine.
on the zoning chapter.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
And that may predominantly involve me answering
Right.
questions, which
Okay.
I'm happy to do.
So, at this point, let me bring the staff up and have them give their staff report on the zoning map amendment case.
Okay. Thank you. I would like to request that the report be accepted into the record as written.
Your request is granted.
Thank you. So this case is for the zoning map amendment, and once this wraps up, assuming all is well, we'll look at the site plan approval and subdivision and dedication together. The petitioner is requesting to amend the zoning map to change the existing B3 in this corner here. This is Tui, Linder, and the M1 Office Assembly Industry Zoning Districts to B4 Regional Mixed-Use Shopping. The petitioner is requesting the rezoning in order to construct a 2-phase mixed-use development, which we'll review later, with first floor retail sales or service and upper story residential over non-residential uses. And in addition, provide on-site stormwater management. The staff reviewed the request and found that the proposed I'm listing uses here, other residential and retail service employment uses as not consistent with the manufacturing and service employment use identified in the village's comprehensive plan. Despite this inconsistency, the property is between properties that are currently zoned B3 business and across the street from a B4 regional mixed-use shopping zoning district, and also located on an arterial street. Staff supports the request, provided ample transportation and infrastructure improvements are made. On-site pedestrian, bicycle, and large delivery and emergency vehicles can safely navigate on the site. And there's no further encroachment of non-manufacturing service or employment uses north of the subject site without a review of and update to our comprehensive plan. Staff recommends that the petitioner's request to amend the zoning map to change the zoning district for 5440 Toohey Avenue from B3 business to B4 regional shopping, regional mixed-use shopping, and change the zoning district for 5404 through 5418 Toohey Avenue and 7235 Linder Avenue, which is up here, from M1 office assembly industry to B4 regional shopping, have that be regional mixed-use shopping, be granted subject to the attached proposed findings of fact.
Okay.
Are there any
Any
questions?
questions of staff, the staff report? None? All right. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience who has a question or comment on the zoning chapter amendment case? Please come up. Zoning map amendment.
My name is Peter.
No, please come over.
Oh, I'm
Take the mic- That's the live microphone.
My name is Peter Silverstein. I'm one of the owners. These other two gentlemen are the other owners of Central Sheet Metal Products. We're at 7251 North Linder Avenue, which is the property just north of this. If I could read my statement, I'd
Sure, go
appreciate
ahead.
it. Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. We are, sorry about that. Central Sheet Metal was established in 1912. We've been a family-run sheet metal fabricator for 110 years, now in the 5th generation of ownership. We have been in the same location since 1959. When we built our building, we were the only building on Linder. We had A.B. Dick to our west on Toohey and AT&T Teletype south across Toohey Avenue. My father and grandfather chose Skokie as a place to raise the family. My siblings and myself all graduated from Niles East High School. We've been listed by the state of Illinois and by the Department of Homeland Security as an essential business, being able to fabricate parts to be used to fight the COVID-19 pandemic. We've also assisted the Skokie Police Department on whatever projects they have. We're asking you to please vote no today on today's proposal. We do not have a problem with retail or restaurant use. Residential buildings do not belong next to M1 Industrial. Except for Goodwill and Panera, all businesses on Linder are industrial in nature. Warehousing, manufacturing, wholesalers. This is the makeup of Linder Avenue. I do not think people spending money on these condominiums would be happy with their view of the north. Seeing steel trucks and forklifts all day. Employees eating their lunch and socializing during breaks outside. Hearing loud beepings of the forklifts moving steel back and forth all day long, starting at 6:30 in the morning. Hearing the dragging of steel hoppers back and forth. All feeling the vibrations of machines punching metal. Should you decide to approve residential housing, my hope is that you will consider us when planning these residences. Soundproof windows. A few suggestions are using soundproof windows and walls and installing a tall privacy wall to separate the two properties. Thank you for your consideration.
My name is Robert Silverstein. I'm Peter's nephew. And just a little bit to reiterate on what he said, I have a picture here of our deceased father when we built the building in 1959. It was nothing but industrial over there. And we never had any plans on moving our company or being interrupted by residential. It's loud in nature. There's no way around it for us.
How would you think residential would impact your business?
Residential?
Yes.
Well,
I think our business would impact the residents.
Would you speak into the microphone, please?
I think our business would impact residents. Our work hours are 6:30 in the morning till 3 p.m. They always have been. The guys who wind up in these condos with their balconies that are basically gonna be in our back parking lot, they're gonna be woken up. Steel trucks come in at 6:30. We get late night deliveries of other supplies and gas and stuff, and we start at 6:30. There's,
Frankly speaking, are you afraid of residential complaints that might
yes,
arise from this?
yes.
Residential complaints, and I don't know if, I'm sure if anybody here is a resident of Skokie and familiar with the area, Linder Avenue, traffic-wise, is already a nightmare. Tui at that intersection is already a nightmare. I've been rear-ended there. My father's been in 2 accidents there. It's a horrible, horrible intersection when it comes to traffic and congestion. That is another big cause of concern. We've gotten many complaints as it is from people making deliveries to our facility because there's no regard for truck drivers anymore. And anybody who tries to back up into our dock, or any dock on that street for that matter, because of how narrow Linder Avenue is, has problems with people honking and zooming around them before they've even finished. Sometimes they're going forward again to straighten back out, and people have the nerve to try and gun it around them. It's very dangerous, and that's another big problem that I see that will impact not only the residents, but that's gonna impact us too.
Okay, all right.
And I have a question,
Yes.
about what Carrie said about zoning to the north in your last statement, about it not being changed from M1 if we should ever sell the property?
For possibly rezoning property north of this development, Tui Avenue, like the corridor, even from McCormick to the far east to here, we've supported a commercial type use along the Tui Avenue corridor, like fronting Tui. If in the future, someone would desire to, say, rezone property, like your property to like a B3 or B4, that we would not want to support that until we review our comprehensive plan and make updates to it. So not closing the door on it, but making sure we look at
So
the
you would-
comprehensive plan first and make updates as needed before we
So you would allow
move
the
forward.
property to the south of us to be rezoned to B4, but you wouldn't allow ours?
At this time, yes, because we've established precedent along Tui Avenue corridor for rezoning property to commercial on properties that front
So
Tui.
7235 is not along the Tui Avenue corridor, 7235 Linder.
Correct.
Okay.
Gentlemen, if you do have a written statement, if you want to give it to Marlene, we can put it on the record.
You wanna give
Peter? Thank you for your time, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, do we have the sign-in sheet?
Also
If you
to,
could sign on the sign-in sheet, so then we can share.
if you just give us
Updates
your
with
name
you.
and address, we'll give you a copy of our report and notify you when this case will go before the Board of Trustees.
Can I ask one question?
Come to the microphone, please.
What is the difference between M1 and industrial? Because I've seen on the map, there's industrial and there's M1. Can anybody
Well,
expand on that?
we have 3 different types of
Okay.
industrial designations. So the M1 is kind of the lightest
What do you,
industrial.
I don't mean to
Yeah.
interrupt, what do you consider light?
Putting,
Well,
fabricating,
fabri- what's
final
fabricated?
Warehouse.
assembly, but no heavy manufacturing, no
Well-
forging,
Okay,
you know,
So we don't forge.
we don't forge.
Yeah,
no
Yeah.
smelting.
No.
No,
yeah.
okay.
So M3 would be the most intense industrial type of uses, and then M2 is a little bit less, and M1 is the least.
What would
Intensive.
M2 be? I'm just kind of curious, because I don't know where we came with M1
Mhm.
for the type of manufacturing we do.
And it's always been
Yeah.
M1.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Did that, and you made a comment, I just wanna note that you made a comment that you are doing this along Tui Avenue, as far
Mhm.
east of McCormick
Mhm.
as far west as you can go. But I have yet to see residential.
There are residential uses along Tui as well,
Nothing like this.
correct?
Okay.
Thank you.
I
Thank you.
just, it doesn't seem like it fits. There's nothing else around there.
Mhm.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Petitioner, Counselor, would you please come up? Do you have any final words before we vote on case 2022-22P? If not, we'll just go move along.
None then.
Okay, thank you. So the motion for approval for case 2022-22P, zoning map amendment. Commissioner Matei moves. Do I have a second? Second, Commissioner Berman. Okay. It's a long time, I kind of like forgot your names, you know? Commissioner Osley is not here. Commissioner Manchella? Manchella?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Commissioner Franklin? Oh, Commissioner Shaw?
Yes.
Commissioner Franklin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jivanyahu?
Aye.
Commissioner Lakani is absent. Commissioner Berman? Commissioner Matei? And I'll vote aye. Okay, again, our vote tonight is not binding. This still has to go before the Board of Trustees for a final vote. And if you've signed up, we'll give you notification of when that case will come before them, and also a copy of the reports from the cases tonight. Okay, next case is case 2022-23P with the subdivision dedication, and I'll hear both cases together concurrently, which is case 2022-24P. Counselor, do you make your big presentation?
It's big presentation time. I'm going to call up Fitzgerald Associates, architects, to walk through some of the more detailed aspects of our project design, beginning with Mike Brecklaw.
Okay. Thank you, sir,
Thank
for
you.
being patient.
Again, my name is Mike Brecklaw. I'm a principal with Fitzgerald Architects in Chicago. We're a firm that specializes in mixed-use
Could
residential.
you angle the microphone towards you?
Oh,
Get closer.
sure.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, we specialize in mixed-use, multifamily residential in a lot of areas, both in the city, in the suburbs, and regionally. I'll just walk through. I won't, everybody's seen the package, so I won't try to belabor anything. We'll be prepared for questions afterwards, but I'll try to hit the highlights. One of the things I did want to share is, as Scott mentioned, we do want to make this a sort of a leading example of sustainable development in Skokie, and just wanted to highlight some of how we think of that as architects and planners and builders. And sustainability is a big word. That's a lot of definitions out there for what it means, but I'll tell you what it means to us in the industry and how we see that. And it's multiple layers, and it's both about people, meaning the occupants and the community around the building, as well as the building itself. And it's about thinking forward into the future. So one of the big things we advocate is it's a healthy and fit environment for the residents of the building. So the way we think about amenity spaces, fitness, opportunities for fresh air and amenities in the community of the people in the building is important. We advocate a program called Fitwell. In fact, Scott and our firm worked years ago on the first Fitwell certified building in the city of Chicago, which really supports that idea. Likewise, that attaches to the community. It's important that we see the residents of the building being good neighbors, being participants in the community, and making sure that the community and the residents have easy access to the rest of the neighborhood in terms of safe crossing of streets, easy access for automobiles, and so forth. The building itself is important that it be a model of low energy use. Everybody knows of the phrase LEED as a sort of a certification that you could apply to a building. We pursue and follow a model in Chicago of green globes, which is a very similar certification process for energy use and so forth. We're also planning on sort of future-proofing the building, what we label as being a resilient building, in that things will change as it's going forward, greater amounts of electricity being used. So we want to plan the spaces of the building, so if things change and additional infrastructure needs to be brought, we're not landlocked in any way. So we think of all these things when we think of sustainability for the project, and that's a big part of the goal, and we want it to be, but primarily, more than energy use, it's for the residents of the building and the community around the building. So, just to start with a little bit of design overview, I wanted to show one of the overall context shots of the site because, as I said, we do a lot of multifamily development and design across the country, in Chicago and the suburbs, and everybody knows that there's a great demand for housing to be built across the country, and finding spots for that is important. And what we're seeing, and you're seeing it elsewhere, a lot of commercial and retail areas are getting a lot more fairly dense residential developments around them. Shopping centers are tearing down old boxes and adding residential to that. Areas close to regional shopping centers are getting much more residential to them. It's a very, housing is in great demand. These are areas where people have easy access to all of the things that they need. So these buildings we're citing, and I think there's a laser pointer here. Does it work? It does. So it's interesting that there's a main circulation path coming out of the Village Crossings. Signalized intersection aligns with what will be phase 1 of the project, and that is an easy access point into the parking field of the buildings. Phase 2 is intended to be a twin of fundamentally a twin, not identical, but very close to a twin. Between the buildings will be a shared outdoor space for both the community coming to the area as well as the residents themselves. Both of the buildings, as you can see, are kind of donut-shaped residential buildings on top of about 3 stories of parking. So that creates a very wonderful sort of private outdoor space that would be developed for the residents at that sort of 3rd floor level. Facing Tui, as well as wrapping a little bit back down Linder, is retail and food and beverage occupancies. No tenants have been confirmed yet, but we're anticipating, and we've thought of it from a parking point of view as being primarily food and beverage oriented, perhaps a signature restaurant at the corner of Tui and Linder. But again, primary vehicular entrance is off of the signalized intersection off of Tui for all the, certainly all the commercial developments. Just a little bit closer view of that. We've set the building back a good distance from Tui. There's both small amount of surface parking in front of the building on the right. There's restaurant and landscape space in front of phase 1. And then there are sort of access points for residential and the restaurant off of Linder. Just this real quick, from a property point of view, as we talked about, the phase 1 happens on the parcel to the west. The area where the cannabis facility will be is segregated as another parcel, and then phase 2 is the parcel to the east. Ground floor plan, you may have seen this, but I'll just hit the high points. So this is the ground floor plan. Again, this is the kind of phase 1 side of things. You're entering off of the signalized intersection into a ground floor of parking that's primarily commercial and supports the retail. Then there are ramps up that go up to parking that support the residential. So levels 2 and 3 of parking support the residential. There's a large, close to 12,000 square foot retail or food and beverage location in phase 1. As you go down Linder, there's the entry lobby for the residential, drop-off, entry to their parking. The cannabis facility is within the footprint of the building, but a separate property. at the northwest corner, some private parking there. And then there's a vehicular circulation loop, both for service vehicles, trash pickup and so forth, that circle the building around the perimeter buildings. And then phase two is fundamentally identical. There's ground floor parking that supports the commercial that surrounds the parking and faces TUI, a ramp that goes up to the upper 2 floors for residential parking. The courtyard space between the 2 phases then becomes an amenity for everyone, and it becomes an entry point for as the residences that live here, kind of from a drop-off. This area right here where where you first enter, there'll be opportunities for valet, for the retail or restaurant that can circulate around and stay within the field itself. This is a diagram. It's a little hard to read, but what I just wanted to point out is that because it's a 3-story parking deck, the front 2-story, the front part of that is really 2 stories tall. It allows the restaurant spaces that are near the front to be like kind of double height in space, and it allows for service vehicles to circulate in that volume. And then you see the parking at the 2nd floor that supports the residential. And then on the 3rd floor, it's a larger parking field that supports the residential above on both sides of the deck. And this is a initial diagram. You can see that it will be 4 stories of residential around that courtyard space. Mix of unit, it's a good primarily 1 bedroom and 2 bedrooms with some studios and 3 bedrooms. Just real quick, in terms of materials and elevations, these are, good-sized buildings, but we've spent a lot of time trying to break down the mass of them and make them feel both appropriate in this sort of commercial environment. So along Linder, for instance, the Cannabis facility at the lower 2 floors of this area, and we've really concealed the parking, the 3 stories of parking, well behind this. So this becomes the entry for the residential building, and then it's the residential space above that. This is east face, very similar materials. I'll jump to the kind of material palette. We're doing a good deal of brick and and punched windows, so it's not a strong amount of glass in any one location. It's more of a residential scale to that. There's more generous glass certainly at the retail level. And then just again reiterating some of the unit counts. Both phases are close to 250 units. Again, predominantly 1 bedroom, about 60%, a good deal of 2 bedrooms, and a modest amount of studios and 3 bedrooms. Commercial space, cumulatively about 30,000 square feet between the 2 phases. And residential parking and commercial parking, we are right at about 4.99, right at 5.0 parking spaces per unit. And just to kind of reiterate where we stand in the design development of this is what we'd call kind of an early schematic design or conceptual design for a building. So there's a lot more sort of nuance. We'll solve lots of problems to the best practices of all sorts of parking and circulation as we go through the design of the building further. Let's see. That's a quick summary of the building. I hope that was enough, and Bill, available for questions later.
Good evening. My name is Javier Milan. I'm a principal with KLOA Incorporated, 9575 West Higgins Road. And we were retained to conduct the traffic study for the proposed development. This traffic study follows all industry guidelines and the state of Illinois requirements. While the development will be constructed in 2 phases, our study assumed the overall development. So we just went straight for the full build-out of the site. As part of the traffic study, traffic counts were conducted at the intersections of Tui Avenue with Nile Center Road, the Village Crossing Access Drive and the side access drive, Linder Avenue, Central Avenue, the McDonald's right-in, right-out access drive, and at the intersections of Linder Avenue with Fargo Avenue, the Tui Town Center access drive, both of them, and Nile Center Road to Fargo Avenue. I have to point out, and I know you have heard this before, due to the ongoing pandemic, traffic volumes are not what you call typical or normal. So we have to adjust those volumes. The way that that's done is by looking at historical data or previous data that the state of Illinois has collected before COVID hit, and then we actually adjust them. And what I mean by adjusting them, we bring them up because they're a little bit lower. So the number of trips to be generated by the proposed development, those are estimated using the ITE, which stands for Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual, and that is a standard utilized by the federal government, local government, meaning the state, county, as well municipalities and consultants alike. That traffic was then assigned to the area roadways based on the travel patterns that were determined from the existing traffic counts. A couple of things that I really want to point out about the trip generation is that what we presented in the studies, it's very consistent with either guidelines in presenting a worst-case scenario, given that, one, we did not take into account any reductions for the proximity of the site to numerous PACE suburban bus routes. Two of those actually serve the Edgebrook Metro station, which is about a mile south of the site. And also, although ITE has shown that approximately 30% of the trips made to retail establishments are diverted from the existing traffic volumes, so meaning traffic that is already in the area decides, you know what, I can go there to either eat or I need to go and shop or so it's already there. It's not new to the area. So even though it's about 30%, the state of Illinois has a guideline that you can only use 20%. So we're bringing it even less in terms of the reduction. So having said that, we then conducted capacity analysis at all of the intersections that I mentioned, and the following improvements to be made as part of the development were identified, and I'll read what was identified. The existing signalized intersection or access drive of Tui Avenue that it's lined up opposite Village Crossing will be narrowed down to be approximately 42 feet wide, providing one 15-foot wide inbound lane and two 12-foot wide lanes striped for an exclusive left turn lane and a short-through right turn lane. The inbound and the outbound lanes will be separated by a 3-foot wide median. What this will do is provide for a better alignment with the Village Center access drive, so the intersection is not quote-unquote skew, it's more lined up the way that it should be lined up. In addition to that, the traffic signal will also be modified to provide a protected permissive southbound left turn phase. What I mean by that is the arrow, when you have the left turns going with the arrow, and then after that, the green ball. So you have a little bit more or organized movement. High visibility crosswalks will be provided. And then furthermore, as part of the development, Tui Avenue will be widened to provide an exclusive westbound to northbound right turn lane, so a right turn lane to go into the site. Right now, there's no exclusive right turn lane, so with this development, Tui Avenue will be widened. Along those lines, Tui Avenue will also be widened at Linder Avenue to provide the same thing, a right turn lane for the vehicles that are making a right, and just move them away from the through traffic volume. I understand there's been some concerns with the anticipated delay that southbound left turn movements from Linder experience and will experience in the future. And I would like to offer the following. The analysis presented in the traffic study, it's a worst case scenario as it does not take into account gaps that are created in the through traffic stream by the two signals to each side, one at Village Crossing and the other one at Central Avenue. It doesn't take into account the few, and I'm saying the few because I have been there, courtesy gaps that sometimes people do give motorists that are exiting. And also, it doesn't take into account the fact that vehicles that are turning left out of Linder can actually make a two-part or two-stage left turn. That's due to the existence of a fairly wide median on Tui Avenue. We're talking about 26 feet wide. So when the analysis is conducted, taking into account these existing and real conditions, the southbound left turn movements will operate at a level of service D or better, so not at a level of service F as it was shown in the traffic study. With regards to the parking, as it was mentioned, the development is proposing to provide 734 residential parking spaces and 246 retail commercial parking spaces for a total of 980 spaces. In order to determine if those parking spaces are adequate to accommodate the average peak parking demand, we looked at the ITE parking generation manual. Based on the parking manual and the values that are presented, and this is in the traffic study, the proposed number of spaces will be able to accommodate the peak parking demand of both the residential as well as the retail and the dispensary demand. So in conclusion, as it was presented in the traffic study, the results of the capacity analysis have indicated that the existing roadway has adequate capacity or general reserve capacity to accommodate the future traffic volumes. The access system as proposed with a signalized access drive, a right-in right-out of 2E Avenue, access onto Linder Avenue, will actually provide very efficient, flexible, and safe ingress-egress to accommodate the traffic estimated to be generated by the development. And as I mentioned, the proposed development will be doing some improvements to 2E Avenue, such as the right turn lanes that I mentioned at 2E Avenue at the signalized access drive and Linder Avenue. And also the changes to the signal to provide a left turn arrow and high visibility crosswalks. That concludes my presentation, so any questions you might have, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Any questions about the traffic study?
There's a question.
Yes.
I'm just curious, did you look at Howard Street at all? And what impact it's gonna have coming off of Linder and total volume on Howard?
No, as I mentioned, we look, let me grab my traffic study so I can
Okay.
mention that. So we basically looked at that, what I'm gonna call the big block. To the north would be Fargo Avenue, both corners, Fargo with Niles Road, Niles Center Road, and Fargo with Linder. And then to the south would be Tui with Linder, Tui with the signalized access drive, and Tui with Carpenter Road. And we went a little bit further west to Tui and Central Avenue. So Tui, as you might be aware, is part of a signalized system by the state of Illinois. So it extends for quite some distance of various signals that are tried to be timed in such a way that they progress traffic.
No, the reason why I ask is that, I mean, Howard's had recent changes over the last half a dozen years, and to the point of adding a Federal Express facility there and also an Amazon facility more recently. And traffic there's increased appreciably, and I'm just wondering why no estimates or view of what this would do to Howard traffic was undertaken.
Again, Howard was not, however, we did not analyze in a vacuum, so we analyzed 2030 conditions, and that is taken from CMAP, or Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, growth factors that are applied to the traffic. Because we cannot just say, hey, it's just this and this. There's going to be growth in the area, so.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask
Yes.
the architectural firm some questions?
Absolutely.
Hi, thank you for coming back up. I have a question relative to the gentleman's concerns on noise factors, and we've encountered this with other buildings with deliveries early in the morning or what have you. In those cases, it's been fast food restaurants and things where there's a great number of complaints from the residents. What is planned in terms of noise control, fencing, appearance relative to the neighbor's industrial section?
There's currently plans that there will be at least a 6-foot-high fence around the perimeter of our property towards the back. In terms of acoustical studies, I think it's to everybody's benefit that residents are happy. When we do projects near expressways, near airports, we often engage an acoustical engineer to they can test the noise level at the site, recommend either how the exterior wall can be constructed differently at parts of the building that might be exposed to more noise. You can upgrade the windows to be a higher acoustical performance than kind of standard. So we would look at all those things because it's to the benefit of the management of the building that they want to be able to, you know, have comfortable tenants. Obviously, that doesn't change if you keep your window, if the window's open, but when it's closed and the exterior wall is designed in an appropriate way, it can mitigate a lot of those noise issues.
Okay. Mr. Mitchell, do you have a question?
I have a question regarding the traffic.
Yes.
Maybe I just missed the analysis, but I didn't hear anything about truck traffic being considered. It sounded to me as though all you were talking about was the residential traffic that would be generated.
Correct. I apologize for that. When we do traffic counts, we use cameras, and they separate between heavy vehicles, trucks, buses, cars, pedestrians, bicycles. So all that is taken into account. In the analysis, there's a, and I'm sorry if I'm getting too technical, but in the analysis, there's a line in which you need to include the percentage of heavy vehicles because they do affect the results of the analysis. You know, certainly trucks take longer to make a maneuver, whether it's a right, a left, or even driving straight through. So yes, I mean, that's taken care of, and that's included based on the existing traffic counts.
Thank you.
Any other traffic questions? Commissioner Berman? Okay.
You may have read or heard on the news over many months that Skokie's had, you know, a lot of discussions relative to bird strike mitigation, and this is probably the biggest project since that whole debate. And so, and I'm told that your firm takes into great consideration bird strike mitigation already, so I'm wondering what you've factored in the construction.
Well, I think first, it's you try to build not a monolithic wall of glass that's sort of undifferentiated. We spend a fair amount of time looking at some of the bird and flight science and striking science. And, you know, obviously reducing glass as much as possible is one thing. You know, you can't reduce it to the point where it's a warehouse, obviously, but by using punched windows, smaller with space between them, we incorporate a break in the window with mullions, so again, it gives an opportunity for a visual break for the bird in that sense. That's at the upper levels. So a variety of materials and facets in the building are helpful for that. At the ground level, it's kind of a mixed bag at times. We want retail to thrive, so that needs glass. The zoning code actually prescribes a minimum amount of glass so that the retail thrives. But there will be some street trees in front of that. Sometimes, you know, when you look at the bird science, trees both attract birds, so it can create the cause of a bird strike, or it could also sort of camouflage the building so that there's a sort of a breaking point. I think we'll look in kind of best practices both at the perimeter of the building and at the courtyard spaces. So the ground floor courtyard, for instance, it can, as we look at the landscape there, I think we'd look with our landscape architect to select the kind of material that is beneficial as habitat where it can be, but it inhibits bird strike. And then on the perimeter, I think we'd look at sort of how best to select those trees that kind of provide that. But it's, you know, we have a 20-page document about bird science that studies all those things, and you have to look at the stratification of the building, and we'd look at best practices for that, but the first thing is to kind of fragment the facade and to not be sort of continuous planes of glass. On the inner courtyards of the building, you know, certainly birds can still come flying in there. You're not going to get sort of migratory birds that are, you know, trying to travel through. But we would do the same thing. Balconies help to break that up. You know, and even things like not putting glass rails on balcony. They're very attractive, but a glass rail on a balcony is the first thing a bird can hit. So we'd look at, you know, other materials for those. So we pay attention to it as best we can and try to do that in the sort of the building type that we're looking at.
And lighting too, I didn't hear to be.
Lighting is absolutely, you're absolutely right. Not only for kind of, you know, dark sky criteria, but reducing the lighting that can disturb migration patterns, if it's really, really strong, or that encourage a bird strike. So not trying, I would say like things like on balconies, some buildings have lights outside of every balcony. I don't think that's necessary. It just highlights that spot, and, it might attract insects, it might bring birds to that location. So kind of a dark sky philosophy, which is something we also advocate, I think helps to promote bird safety.
So approval for the site plan approval to put a provision in that you would agree to at least review and try and integrate best practices in it, since it's silent on it currently?
I
Would be
think best
acceptable?
practices, I think from a landscaping point of view and thinking about, that is
In
we're always
writing.
open to that discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Ross?
Related to phase one, phase two, timeline for phase one, phase two?
So what's preventing us from developing on phase two at the moment is the leasehold estate. We have 2 tenants that are currently on the property, one of whom would prefer to relocate to a new facility in Wisconsin. So they're really not holding up the process at all, but Tile Shop, which we've worked with your staff on multiple occasions, trying to relocate them, trying to incentivize them, trying to find them a new home. Unfortunately, they have the right to be there. They have a lease. So really, I can't give you a concrete timeline other than we're very much aligned, and we would obviously like to build the second phase. But they have a lease, and that is the.
Expiry on the lease, what's the expiry?
Well, they have options. So the term expires in 2025, but they have the ability to extend.
For how long?
They can, I believe it's 2032 is their option. But I can check on that. I don't know the exact term, but I can find that for you.
So, we could be years off on phase two, as in many years.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Franklin?
Yes, I had a question back on the architectural plan. I guess I just want to confirm how the cannabis dispensary is going to work as it relates to the rest of the building in phase one.
So it's within the footprint of the building, but physically separated. So from the parking behind it, there is parking off of the service drive that circulates around the building that supports the cannabis facility. There's no sort of, so if you were a customer here, you parking here and entering the building, there's no, there's very physical separation between both the roof of this and the building above it, as well as the walls around it. So the entry would be somewhere off the front of the building.
So it abuts parking on that,
Yes, that
there,
would be a
that's
solid-
parking.
yeah,
And it's parking above as well.
And there's parking above. Yes, there's no
No residential.
above, but there's 2 stories of parking
No,
above.
eventually there's residential,
Eventually
but not
there is. Correct.
immediately.
Not immediately above it.
Okay, that was really my question, thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner
Related
Matei.
to the makeup of the residential, is this condo or is this rental or mix?
This is rental. Yes.
Any other questions?
You mentioned
Sure.
about 11,000 retail space for like a food and beverage. So are you going to have a multiple tenant, or do you have anybody that interested renting the space?
Well, we're planning it to be flexible. I think Scott can probably speak to any sort of particular tenants he'd like to find.
The short answer is we don't have any tenants. We've gotten interest from several, whether it's full service to limited service to fast casual, but we want to be able to program the space such that it would accommodate a nicer restaurant, but also be flexible in the event that smaller format users are more interested in the space.
Are you planning to have like a drive-in in the facility for the? Okay.
No driving.
All right, thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions of the petitioner? Gentlemen, are you basically finished with your presentation? I would like to get the staff up at this point. Do you have anything else to present?
We're happy to answer additional questions and then
Well, perhaps after the staff report. Okay? Okay, Carrie? Carrie, gonna go over case 2022, 23, and 22P, or, excuse me, 23P and 24P.
Yes, yes. So a staff requests that the report be accepted into the record as written, and there will be some minor adjustments as the presentation goes on.
Okay, your request is granted again.
Okay, thank you. We're looking at two cases, the site plan approval, and then also a subdivision and dedication related to this development. So the residential, the residential component, we're looking at a grand total of 494 units, 251 in Phase 1 and 243 in Phase 2. The commercial component, the grand total is 30,300 square feet. So the first floor may be restaurant with outdoor dining, cannabis dispensary, retail, and then also other uses such as the residential lobby for the residential above. The first technical correction is on page 2. The number of parking spaces, the grand total proposed is 980. 970 is typed into the report there. The building height is 7 floors. The first 3 are concrete podium, and then the 4 floors above where the residential is wood frame for a grand total of 79 feet, 4 inches in height. And the street level courtyard is for public use, and other features include outdoor dining and valet service. The motor vehicle access to the overall site will use 2 curb cuts along Toohey and then 4 curb cuts along Linder. And pedestrian access will be via public sidewalks and a multi-use path along Toohey. This is a state right-of-way, and the state requires as part of its complete streets policy to have an 8-foot multi-use path, 8-foot wide multi-use path along Toohey. Another technical correction on page 3. This is a 3-lot subdivision, not 2. When it was originally written, we had the little cannabis lot was kind of hidden there, so that's how that made it into the report that way. The comprehensive plan has identified uses for the site as manufacturing and service employment in Sector C. We covered that more in case 22P as part of the rezoning request, or the zoning map amendment request. The land use is first floor retail sales or services, including a possible cannabis dispensary, and upper floor story residential over non-residential uses. On page 4, the front yard, the front yard requirement of the 25-foot setback from public right-of-way is only for frontages along state or county rights-of-way. So the mention of the front yard of parcel A, which is the cannabis dispensary along here, since Linder is not a state or county right-of-way, the setback is only 15 feet, so that requirement is met. Items of relief, and if I miss any, take dubious notes and see if our conversations overlap here. So items of relief requested for this development is from section 11845-2. So the parcel A to have the front yard of 16 feet 8, that's fine. So that is not an item of relief, and that should be struck from the report. Parcel A to have a 0-foot side yard and a 0-foot east yard in lieu of the minimum 25 feet. So since this is, the property line is basically going along the wall of the building, that's not a 25-foot setback, so that would be one item of relief. Parcel B would be to have 0-foot east and west side yards. So the property boundaries along here, so it's essentially 0 along here, and then also 0 again next to the cannabis dispensary. And then parcel C to have a 0-foot west side yard in lieu of the minimum 25. I believe there's just kind of a covered canopy that connects to basically to from phase 2 to phase 1. So that's really the setback. Otherwise, there's the courtyard, but there is that setback that gets us to the 0-foot west side yard there. Section 118-145 4C to allow 59% of the west wall linear footage of phase 1 to consist of commercial uses or lobby area in lieu of the required 60. So close, but for our mixed use districts, we really want to support facades that support pedestrian activity, and so that's where the minimum 60% is. But with the cannabis, it's not they can't, they're not reaching the 60% there. 118-145 4D to allow approximately 26% of the west wall of phase 1 to be window or entry door glazing in lieu of the minimum 50%. 118-145 4E to allow a corner building without a corner entrance. So there is a retail or restaurant potential at this location, but there isn't an entrance, kind of like a Main Street at the corner of First and Main having that pedestrian entrance. It's facing Toohey and Linder, so the entrance would be most likely along the north side of that building and not facing the corner. 118-212I to allow a setback to the pavement or back of curb of less than 6 feet. It's roughly 5 feet here, and it's not a square property boundary, so but it is less than 6 feet, at least closer to 2E. 118-2186C to allow 355 parking spaces in phase 1 and 379 parking spaces in phase 2 for the residential uses. And then also just other relief as may be discovered during tonight's conversation or as we prepare the Master Plan Commission report to the Village Board. Some main, I'm sorry, did I catch everything?
Yes.
Okay. And so kind of some main overarching concepts for this development. Water and sewer capacity. This study has been submitted to the village, and increases or changes must be approved by the village, and design and installation costs for any infrastructure improvements to be borne by the developer. I guess some of the key items, there's an existing 8-inch water main on site that is getting old and would likely get in the way of this development, so that would be something that would need to be replaced. And then also looking at the combined sewer capacity, the study recommended, since there's combined sewer has stormwater and sanitary water, wastewater going into the same pipe. So under dry or normal conditions, it can handle that flow, but when there's a storm event, the capacity study recommends increasing the amount of stormwater that the site can handle to kind of make up for the sanitary flow. I hope that.
Okay.
So there's a volume, try and handle more volume to help with both of the storm and sanitary. Clear as mud? Okay. And then traffic and IDOT. The pending IDOT review and approval has the potential to significantly impact the site and development plan. And the site plans appear to be possibly conflicting with the proposed right turn lanes and proposed shared paths, so that's some technical correction that may need to occur along Tui. The Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, the site will need a full WMP permitting process from MWRD, and the village will be the entity to endorse such an application, and then only after the local requirements of our code are also met. Utilities, some will have to, the petitioner will have to make sure that all public utilities are shown on site to make sure that we have everything taken care of there. Any overhead and proposed utilities shall be buried or installed underground. Pace Bus is to review and approve the proposed bus stop relocation, a concrete pad, and possibly other improvements such as a bus shelter, since there are going to be quite a few residents here, to have a bigger amenity associated with this development, and might also not only be needed on westbound side, which is on this north side, bless you, but also maybe possibly eastbound on the south side. Fire Prevention Bureau provided a memo and wants to make sure that their tower truck can navigate the site, so that is under review. And the proposed development could increase the number of housing units in District 72 by approximately 20%, and so the school has been in contact, so just wanted to point that out as well. The phasing could create one or more non-conforming uses in the area where the tile shop is, and so should they leave before phase 2 starts, the uses can only be uses that are allowable by the B4 zoning district, or the types that can occupy the property. It is possible that the feedback from one or more of the aforementioned entities could warrant a significant enough change that the petitioner would need to return in the future for a modified review through the village board or a full plan commission process review. Now we talk about lighting. Okay. Bicycle parking, additional bicycle parking will need to be provided on site. There's quite a bit there, but we need additional to meet the village code. Bear with me as I make sure I try and get everything that we haven't discussed already. So sidewalk access around the buildings must be a minimum of 5 foot wide clear for the walking path, and then 2 feet for a bumper overhang. So the parking that's near the Cannabis site, it's short a foot, so we have some adjustments need to be made there. We'll ask that the loading areas be dimensioned and ensure that they're at least 10 feet wide by 25 feet long and have a 12-foot vertical clearance. We'll also need to take a look at ramp grades, both interior in the parking structure and then also exterior. Engineering staff does support the traffic study conclusions pending IDOT approval. And then on to the subdivision and dedication. To accommodate the right turn lanes for westbound traffic, there is a 10-foot dedication plus basically a 20-foot dedication at the intersection and then back down to 10 feet along here. So that will at least the long-range plan would be dedicate that right-of-way to IDOT after a plat of conveyance prior to recording the dedication. We do have some water conservation, electrical conversation, and burden mitigation comments in the staff report. And the Environmental Health Division will review any detailed permit plans that build out of new food service facility at the time of building permits. Any potential restaurant space should be planned for the black iron ductwork to accommodate a possible restaurant occupancy. The Forestry Division, there's some landscaping adjustments that will be requested. So either a combination of fence and/or landscaping, especially, the landscape plan is quite thorough, but we will need to have screening, either by combination of fence or landscaping, also along that north property boundary and the east property boundary. So staff recommendations. Staff recommends that the petitioner's request for site plan approval be approved and a 3-lot subdivision and dedication be granted for 5404 through 5440 Toohey Avenue and 7235 Linder Avenue based on the proposed findings of fact and subject to recommended site plan approval and subdivision dedication conditions listed below. I covered the items of relief but we will strike the parcel A comment under 118-145-2 and then add the 3 items that were mentioned earlier verbally, 118-212I for the curb setback, 118-2186C for the parking spaces, residential parking spaces, and then any other items of relief. The recommended site plan approval conditions begin on page 11 of the report. We want to ensure that the base plan for all, landscape plan, site plan, et cetera, is the same plan for everything, so they all work together, because sometimes there's an architecture plan and engineering plan. We want to make sure all of those match. Update the site plan to provide 24-foot wide drive aisles and driveways. And item C, provide the preliminary comments from IDOT for staff review. Item D, update the site plan so the Linder loading area meets the minimum loading space and access drive requirements, and make sure that it doesn't look like a loading zone from the Toohey-Linder intersection. Item E, ensure a 5-foot clear walkway plus 2-foot bumper overhang for parcel A. Item F, provide an additional 25 residential bicycle parking spaces on site. Item G, add any additional site distance triangles at the Toohey and Linder intersection and each driveway and intersections of drive aisles. Item H, address comments from previous reviews. I believe all of them are incorporated in this report, but there might be a few from the preliminary plan review process. We want to make sure those are addressed. Ensure all required, item I, ensure all off-street parking spaces abutting walls, fences, or other obstructions has a minimum width of 10 feet. Adjust the crosswalk along the, item J, adjust the crosswalk along the north side of the signalized intersection to per ADA and I'll just spell it out, PROWAG requirements. Item K, adjust the parking designations so 741 residential and guest parking spaces are provided in lieu of the 734 shown on the plan. Adjust the parking study to show the 494 residential units. Item M, the outbound lanes on the north side of the intersection should reflect the recommendations of the traffic study. Item N, access drives on the plan should reflect the recommendations shown on the traffic study. Item O, was discussed as part of the level of service, but with the update to the analysis, address that level of service for the, in the study, primarily the ones where level of service F remains. Item P, submit a revised traffic study with new unit counts, square footages, et cetera. I do have two verbal ones to add here. Item Q, update the landscape plan to add the screening to the north and east sides of the parking lots in the setback areas to provide setback screening. And then item R, for each item of relief that we settled on, that prior to this case going before the Board of Trustees, that $400 for each item of relief be paid. The rest are primary, so all of those should be taken care of before this, the Master Plan Commission report goes before the Village Board. All the items starting, beginning on page 12, are typical standard conditions. There's one, I think that's not standard. Item 31 on page 15. This is the plat of conveyance. So in order to accept the dedication that's along Tui, south of this red line here, it'll probably be a two-step process. One, a plat of conveyance, and then the recording of the subdivision and dedication. I think that's it.
Okay, Carrie.
Oh, sorry. Now on 24P, the subdivision and dedication. So all of those, so the plat of conveyance, it should be subdivided based on the plat of consolidation and dedication dated July 21st, 2022. And then submitting electronic files to the planning division and other typical standard conditions for subdivisions and dedications. Okay, now I think I'm done.
Any questions of staff on either of these cases? No? Okay, well, Carrie, thank you very
All right,
much.
Thank you.
That was a long-winded
Sorry.
report, but well presented. Anybody in the audience who has a comment or question pertaining to the two cases? Not? Okay. Counselor, have you come up, please? Okay, I've been asked to find out if you would consent to, well, I'm sorry,
6-foot sound fence.
sound fence. Would you commit to that?
Can you clarify what it would be? A sound fence?
Mr. Brecklaw indicated that there would be a 6-foot-high sound fence along the north property line. And so we were asking if you would be committed to doing that, since it's not shown on the plans.
I'm sorry, I may have misspoke. I meant solid fence.
Okay.
It just
You did say a 6-foot fence.
but a 6-foot-tall fence, yes.
It's probably my hearing.
Okay.
Could it be a sound, I don't know what the difference is, but if we're gonna be getting complaints about noise from the residents eventually, then does it make sense to be putting it up now?
I don't know that it would be, given that the first resident starts above 3 stories of parking, so the first resident is at
Yeah, fence not gonna help.
40 feet in the air, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Do you have anything further to comment on as far as the staff report or anything we've said tonight?
Only if commissioners have questions.
Okay.
I would
Any
only
final
ask,
questions of the petitioner? None? Thank you.
thank you.
At this time, anyone in the audience have a question or comment on the cases? Yes, please come back up. No, please come back up. And for the record, and this case number, would you give us your name again, please?
Sure, Robert Silverstein. For all of the stuff that you just went over, it seems like there is a lot of exceptions being made to try and push this project through, when they also mentioned that the phase 2 could potentially be 10 years down the road. So if that is the case, is there gonna be any sort of differences to the plans, and when is that gonna be made?
Generally not, and most of the findings of facts and recommended conditions are pretty common with cases like this, so,
Okay,
yeah.
it just seems like you guys are bending a lot to allow this to
Well,
go through.
I wouldn't say bending, I think what we're doing is we're, you know, kind of redefining, or not defining, the usage, and to, impose, you know, regulations and restrictions on some of the use.
Okay, I mean, it just seems like there's a lot, and they have, you know, the one that pokes out to me the most is the entrance for the dispensary. You're basically putting it basically in our lot, and I tend to lean away from it. I know that parking has been an issue with dispensaries all over the state of Illinois, and I'm just weary of the amount of foot traffic over there with the amount of trucks we have. You know, it's safety for everybody that's in the area.
Yes, but I think we have special, requirements for dispensaries as far as location of doors, you know, for security reasons. So I would imagine, is that something that we've looked at, Carrie? Or-
You're like,
Just
What-
the expectation that they would comply with, state and
State and local
local
regulations, yeah.
regulations, yeah.
I believe generally, doesn't the chief of police or the police department get involved with that, the security?
who handles the security and regulates the parking for them?
Well, the police department reviewed all the plans, so we know that they're acceptable to them. We do have a dispensary in northern Skokie by Old Orchard Shopping Center. I am not aware of any complaints regarding that facility. It's located next to a single-family home.
Okay.
I don't
Thank
think
you.
we had any complaints from the resident, have we?
Not that I know of.
Okay,
Okay,
yes,
thank you.
thank you. Any further questions? Okay, yes, please, come back up.
First, I just wanted to make sure that I know where we landed on the fence. Is it a recommended condition for the 6-foot-high regular fence? Or is that not
Yeah,
a?
it's a regular fence now.
Okay,
Yeah, we just realized that an acoustical fence would be of no value.
okay. And then there's a minor labeling error that we disclosed verbally before the Appearance Commission that staff recommended. We disclose verbally again now. Carrie, I might need your help locating what this is. It's a non-substantive correction. For the plan slide labeled page 15. And then 16.
Okay.
Those are both labeled phase, both of these pages are labeled in the bottom right-hand corner, Phase 2, Level 1 Site Plan. Page 15 should be labeled Phase 2, Level 2 Plan. And then page 16 should be labeled Phase 2, Level 3 Plan. Those are the parking levels that they
Okay,
actually depict.
Carrie, if you note that correction and have that ready when the
Yes.
case
Actually, I
goes
think it
before the
might have
board.
been corrected 'cause it looks.
We'll correct
Yeah.
that.
Okay,
Yeah.
we've submitted a correction, and I
Okay.
just wanted to
Yeah,
make sure
well, thank you.
everybody was, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. On case 2022-23P, I'll need a motion to move on the case, which is the site plan approval. Then I'll need another motion for the relief, involved with that case. So, first I'll need a motion for the site plan approval, case 2022-23P. Motion approved, Commissioner Matei. Do I have a second? Commissioner Berman, thank you. Commissioner Manchella,
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw,
Yes.
Commissioner Franklin,
Aye.
Commissioner Giovannaho.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Berman,
Aye.
Commissioner Matei,
Aye.
now vote aye. And now I need a motion to approve the relief in this case.
We should probably just clarify as presented.
Clarified as presented within the case. Okay.
I'll make the motion.
Commissioner Matei, Commissioner Berman, excuse me. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second? Who's that? Commissioner Shaw, thank you. Okay. Commissioner Manchella,
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw,
Yes.
Commissioner Franklin,
Aye.
Commissioner Giuliano,
Aye.
Commissioner Berman,
Aye.
Commissioner Matei,
Aye.
and I'll vote aye. So relief passed. On the subdivision dedication, case 2022-24P, need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve as presented, 2022-24P.
Commissioner Shaw, thank you. Second, anybody? Commissioner Mancello, seconds. Okay, call for the vote. Commissioner Mancello,
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw,
Yes.
Commissioner Franklin,
Aye.
Commissioner Giovannahu,
Aye.
Commissioner Berman,
Aye.
Commissioner Matei,
Aye.
and I'll vote aye. And was there relief, separate relief? I need approval, a motion to approve the relief as presented within this case.
Was there relief?
Was there relief?
I don't think there was.
Not for the subdivision. Okay, very good. We won't do that. All right. So, everything's been approved. These cases, again, will go before the Board of Trustees at a time later. Again, they meet on the first and third Mondays of every month. If you give me your name and address, we will notify you when that meeting will occur, and we'll also give you a copy of the report. And gentlemen, good luck to you, and thank you, and thank you for everybody. Thank you for coming out tonight to this meeting. Thank you. This meeting's adjourned.